Hello and thank you for tuning in, I guess. I'm campaign cartographer community forum user Lil Hans, and this is going to be a video in which I show and tell and put to practical use some of the thoughts and ideas that I described in an article I wrote. And that article is called Doodles and Drawings. There's a link to it in the description below, and you can check it out if you want to. If you haven't already, don't worry, it's not a required reading type of situation here. But yeah, long story short, I guess the today's exercise is going to be about creating fake watercolor paintings in campaign cartographer. So I'll be going through some of the processes and ideas there as put forth in the article. So, right, I'll get straight to business then. I'm currently looking at a setup which is basically, all puns intended, drawing rather heavily on the doodles and drawing style. I'm combining a couple of ideas actually that were addressed, but not necessarily the main focus of that article. So doodles and drawings, there is a second iteration of that leading up to this palette plotter thing then. And yeah, as you can tell, for each new map, there's going to be this palette section over here. Aptly named. And you can also check out, I strongly recommend that you do, check out Ralph's guide to how you create a template or a custom style of your own. Very, very good read, even if you're not thinking about creating a style of your own necessarily. It kind of gives you an idea just how, I'm not going to say easy, but I'm going to say things get less intimidating when it comes to campaign cartographer, I think, as a whole, when you sort of have someone like Ralph popping the hood and showing you where you can throw a wrench in and set things up to your liking. So check it out. It's a great fun effort, I think, to put something together of your own entirely, and it's worthwhile. But anyway, yes, link to that as well in the description. Check that out. Pause the video and check it out now. And welcome back, I guess. So the palette, the purpose thereof being to sort of mimic an actual palette, I guess, in the sense that I want to have something readily available without having to go into too many custom tools, I guess. So the style, the doodles and drawing style, operate on the premises of there being a couple of sheets worth for applying polygons primarily to bring color to the imaginary canvas. And then there's a couple of literal couple of sheets that are supposed to be looking like, well, color also, but more like contours and lines and that sort of thing, right? And all of these sheets have in common that they operate rather and rely rather heavily on blur and transparency, except of course for the inky line sheet, which has the blur effect, which takes off some of the edge of the entity and fades it, making it softer. But yeah, as far as color representation goes, there will be no transparency, and there will be a very full color of whatever tone is currently selected. So with the sheet effects turned on, then we can see exactly what happens with each of these sheets. So I put up a couple of columns there. I've began selecting some color tones for some of the boxes there, and that is of course a means to have some sort of consistency as well in what I do. I get to fetch a color I can immediately put in the desired sheet, so that's going to be neat. I wanted this sort of gray sphere thing. Let's try to make this in marble then, sort of metallic approach. So, presentation. So I can switch between sheets very easily, and if I do happen to have if I do happen to have some sort of break or hiatus, I can take a quick dinner break and get back to the map in 2 years' time, and I can work with a fair amount of consistency, like so, which is great. You can do that, of course, with all the 176 tools of the John Roberts dungeon as well, but this not being a case of having textures at the ready, I don't have to worry about that many tools. I just have to worry about the total amount of colors that are available to me. And I'm not going to be using all of them either, probably just a few, on account of, as you can tell, the way overlapping will create different tones of color. So that's transparency for you. So in choosing then different qualities, it's up to me then to sort of create a believable image with regards to the objective there, which is of course to create a bit of a metallic feel to this sphere. So yeah, obviously that didn't go too well, so we're going to remove that one and examine just why I keep any custom tools around in the first place. So let's go back to the black sharp brush. I don't know why I call it sharp, but that's beside the point. I'm first just going to lock up the sponge bits there. This would be the sponge section down here, where of course I go from kind of vague all the way out to extremely theoretical edges. There's a whole lot of blur. You can see the transition from nothing to even less of an edge there, all given the amount of space. I mean, and everything counts in large amounts, I guess. So yeah, I locked up the sponge sheet because I don't want to manipulate that. I want to specifically trace along the edge of a previous shape, and for that purpose these custom tools have an edge. Gosh, the puns. If there is an edge, I can trace along it. So I'm going to do that. T for tracing, and I'm going to go probably, which way do I need to go? I need to go that way. Actually, let's start from down here, possibly. Make things a little easier. So yeah, I get to trace, and that's something I don't get to do, of course, with the default tools. They can't do that, sadly. If that were the case, of course, I would immediately throw out all these other tools, all two of them, and just keep the blob, which, by the way, is a fractal draw method circle. Let's check it out. That's a circle to the best of the ability of the software. I can manipulate the severity there of the fractals, and yeah, with each press of the button I get another shape. So that's useful when you're fast speed painting canopies, I guess. Lovely. I can even smooth these bits, make them a little smoother and a bit more credible as canopy shapes, I guess. Right, let's do away with that. That's this blob in one fell swoop. Off you go. So yes, I get to trace, I guess is what I'm saying here. I get to trace along whatever edge is already existing. So that's something to cherish, I guess. Let's take this up from pitch black to slightly more grey tone there, I guess. Brighter, brighter, brighter. It's still going to add, of course, to a bit of a darker tone there, since it is, after all, there is transparency at work. So that doesn't matter. Now I have something of a sphere shape. If it's watercolor or not, who knows? Some sort of paint. It certainly looks like it could be something other than a computer-assisted design software sort of thing. And one thing, of course, that is quite possible with this approach where everything is crafted by me or you is that I can rely on a great number of sources that usually don't sort of concern themselves that much with uh, fantasy grounds worthy or fantasy, yeah, virtual tabletop or Roll20 maps, that sort of thing. Any type of map, really. Because this, of course, is going into the virtual tabletop later. This big orb. No. These painters and these users of paintbrushes proper, they tend to do other things, right? They tend to do landscape and houses and people and fruit and animals, and that's not very helpful, is it? In the greater scheme of things. For the sake of putting a map together. But what I find is that you can still use them as a bit of a source, because I, for one, didn't know that there are two types of shadows. There is the self-cast shadow, which is something that an object will sort of cast upon itself. It will break the incoming light and give itself a bit of a shade. And then there is the cast shadow, where the object is, yeah, you might have guessed, it's casting its shadow upon something else, like a surface. And that typically should be darker, I'm told, by these talented people. So probably this shade should probably go more to the back of this, because the light seems to be coming from up here and moving straight towards the orb as we're looking at it. But who cares? The important thing here is, of course, that this looks like something that wasn't done using computer-assisted design software. That's the important thing. So yes, all sorts of sources can be tapped into, so to speak, with regards to how you want to go about doing things. And all these bits and pieces add up to a great grand total sum of something that kind of looks like it was done using a proper paintbrush. And that's the gist of it. That's the idea. Pretty much like any odd wargame miniature painting professional, semi-pro, highly talented amateur will tell you, is that there is no piece of wood, there is no piece of stone or metal, of course. That's all the paint coming onto whatever shape the three-dimensional slab of plastic is currently sort of adhering to. So that's going to be one thing that we actually do have in common with the acrylic paint on plastic miniature crowd. They use color, they use paint, and they use techniques, of course, that cannot be translated, but they use the process of thinking there with regards to what it is they want to do and what it is that they want to convey. So adding then to these rather shapely shapes, I'm going to put on a texture which exists and see what that does for everything. And it takes forever because this is a laptop of yesteryear, and of course it's quite some texture as well. So these operations, of course, will slow down to grind to a halt. There's a lovely place called unsplash.com. I put a link to the exact user who uploaded this particular texture with a high definition photograph, I believe, of watercolor paper. So yeah, and that would be, again, this would be similar to the acrylic paint in a certain pattern or a certain technique applied to a piece of plastics in order to create a shine where there isn't any shiny bits and pieces at all, just plastics. So this would be suggesting then that we're looking at a piece of paper where we normally would expect there to be some sort of watercolor painting going on. So the way these shapes were put in place, and also where they were put in place, the texture, the context. Again, it's not going to be possible to do everything right and get perhaps all the pigment concentration at the end of a brushstroke. Extremely difficult to imitate. I've tried. I'll get there in a couple of years, but I'm not there yet. Who knows? Next year maybe. Christmas 2022. I've got it. Pigment concentration that doesn't exist. No, these little details which give away the fact of the process involved in creating the globe or the sphere or whatever it is. So in addition to, of course, just the application of color, there is also the application of contours, and contours come in my world, and the way of thinking comes in two shapes. There's going to be like contours like very strict and very clean contours that you will expect from someone who's very talented. And again, this makes for a convincing, I think, pencil strokes with the pencil there. I don't know what that is, so we'll do away with it. And you can also do them, of course, if you don't want to get very sort of into the cleaner side of doing things. You can also do them using polygons. So let's see how we can go about doing that then. So that would be a 2-node straight line. It's a bit warped, but kind of straight line, I guess. Something that you could sort of use. So yeah, the path tool is an excellent tool for creating contours that says oomph, but it may not always be appropriate. So what is a polygon then? Now, well, a polygon then is a shape which has boundaries that are defined by nodes between which the draw method will create an edge, and then there can be a solid fill or there can be like a hollow fill. So we can see how this is a box because this is the box tool, and I gave it 2 nodes exactly, and then the tool added these 2 nodes as well relative to the position, the grid, the overall coordinate system. That's what it did. Fantastic. It's a very nice box. I like it. So because it is a box and because it has nodes, I can also use node manipulation tools and functions. So I could add, if I wanted to, a 5th node to this. Let's put it down there. I can of course also use the node edit function and simply move these nodes in a way that I want, right? So is that going to be good? That's a line, obviously. It's the same polygon. It's no longer a box. I have molded it into something different. But that takes a while. If I wanted to put a contour around this sphere here, then I would need to I could do that with a box, but it would take an awful lot of deliberate action, and I don't have the dinner's ready anytime soon, and then it's going to be 2.5 years before I can finish the map, so that's not going to happen. But because polygons are being just that, things that can add interesting shapes to things, that too could be contour, of course, a bit oversized and not at all appropriate in a map setting, but let's do away with it. Farewell ribbon. But yeah, I can use my shape tool as well, of course, to this end. So I can just try my luck with a couple of nodes. 1, 2, 3 nodes, and then I execute it. Right click button there. Way too thick, obviously. I may want to I may want to actually adhere perhaps to a grid. If I want to draw a box, I can add like very small variations over this distance there, and then I can use the arrow buttons to dial down to 0 fractals. So if I execute now, then of course it will go all the way back to the first node, because that's how a closed polygon tool operates. That's the first and that's the last node, and it will automatically close the gap and use whatever fill style setting is involved. And this is great news then, because that means that I can capitalize on whatever edge there is out there. We've already established, of course, the edge of the custom tool. So we're going to once more ask of them the impossible, creating brush strokes where there aren't any. So let's do a very fine brush contour to this sphere then. Making sure I got everything locked down so I don't accidentally put something in the wrong sheet, or wrong layer rather, or access something from the wrong layer. So let's do the very, yeah, let's do that then. Maybe keep a line open. There we go. So I will quite simply turn off the snap because I don't need it. That's going to be my starting point for the whole operation. I'm going to press T for trace. I'm going to select the circular shape. Drew the very first thing. I'm going to be asked to put out a point where I start the trace operation. That's going to be there. And you can see that it kind of immediately circled all the way around the edge. That's when I put my third node. Now it's going to be node bonanza, where you can probably tell from the way the recording software operates that, yeah, there should be an indication where I put my nodes down. There is one edge, of course, the first edge going out. It is going to be sort of spot on, very mechanically accurate. So that's always going to be very, very precise. But going back, of course, I can deviate as much as I want to. But of course, if this is going to be a contour that goes into a map of sorts, might still look good, much like the ribbon down there, but it may not look terrific if you throw in a few miniatures. I mean, a demon may suffer from that. So upon execution, of course, the first node is going to be connected with the very last node. So there's a gap somewhere here where that's the turning point where I go all the way back to the beginning. And I now have a contour which of course takes on some rather sort of mechanical or machine-like qualities, in that it is rather generously dispersed the ink across the distance. So let's try another color and see if we can get something more interesting. Yeah, not pitch black. Pitch black, typically, I think, if you're going to cover a large area with black, or using the ink, sort of very solid color shape or color qualities, because it is so full and it is so opaque, you do well, I think, to tone it down a little and use perhaps the grayscale instead. Look at me talking about these colors then like they were some real thing. Yes, and we'll be blending non-existing colors next. So there we are. Fantastic. That's clearly a metallic sphere. I'm going to save this one. And of course it is. So the question is, how quickly can you go about creating a map? I don't know. I've never clocked myself, but it seems to drag on forever and a half. So let's do that for the next 25 or so minutes. Again, let's call this then sphere is solid metal. Is the name of this masterpiece. Unknown artist circa early 2020s. Right, fantastic. So away you go. And let's pick up an ongoing project here called Tower on Rock. Actually, let's first perhaps close down this one. We don't need the extra CPU siphoning in the background. So here we are, the Tower on the Rock. What do we have here? Well, we got again a 50, or again we got now a 50 by 50 meter map. We also have, of course, the rather cumbersome texture operating there in the background or foreground, depending on how you look at it. I've got some height lines which I've added in. Let's do away with that one. Yeah, height lines can be kind of neat to add in, just to have something to go by when it comes to colorizing later. So there is a tower here which I've sketched up under a sketch. It was wonderful. And then I've added these sort of height contours, and some would say that this is a perfectly healthy and fully operational Death Star map. It's a map which can be used, but we're going to try and add some color to it over the course of the next 24 minutes. So that's going to be impossible. Probably, we never know. All I know is that I want water in this thing. For the time being, I'm actually going to turn off the texture, because speed painting. So what do we have? Let's go by this color. Let's do this, and let's keep it in the brush section there, but let's use the cousin from the countryside, the sort of less transparent, and just to give you an idea of how much transparency is at work here. This is 35% opacity, which should give you an idea what happens in the other sheets there, what's going on. So let's do that bit. Let's bring the color down to 67 or 66. Let's do 66. See where that takes us. Ad hoc palette box, right? That's going to be the color for this bit up here. Fantastic. Right. So true to form, I'm not going to use necessarily the entirety of the canvas, because that's what these painting stuff people tend to do. So are the height lines locked away? They are. Always got to keep remembering to sort of unlock things, always, all the time. Otherwise, otherwise, of course, you won't be able to manipulate things. And as it turns out, tracing is a form of manipulation, which requires that you don't freeze the thing. Fair enough. So there we are. That's the ocean. Is that going to be okay by everyone? Is it? Possibly. So I want to do some waves, and I want to be introducing wave patterns then to this. That's going to be a bit tricky. So for the time being, I'm just going to throw in some fairly bright grey to the rocky bit below, and tracing, I'll be doing that for sure. I suppose I could have just started with something covering the entire thing, I guess. Oh, sorry, we'll want that later. And just sending this one to back now is going to have the exact same effect. Oh, there can only be one at the back. Terribly sorry. There we go. That's a nice dark solid sort of fill. Not as diluted as these other colors then. Fantastic, perfect. I may actually in fact want to turn the brightness up to around 252. Perhaps even going so far as to 54. Yes, because again, of course, transparency at work here means that everything will be very dark. Might be good, might also not be good, who knows. So I'm going to be doing something I've seen in images where there's water being painted. So I'm going to try and do that, and try to do that in a time efficient manner. So I'm going to go with grey, and I'm going to go with the line there, so grey line, I think. Yeah, and I'm going to select my imaginary. Actually, I'm going to do, let's go with black for now, I think, and I'll show you why shortly. So I'm going from the edge there, and I'm going to be doing this, right? And I may want to rein in the ice cream sort of thing there. So that's one thing I just did. And I will want to, I guess, immediately go into, I think maybe the sketch is going to be too faded. Let's do, it's going to be too faint. Let's check and see how that behaves on top of itself. It gets rather, it's a bit of a sharp contrast there, which I don't really, I couldn't care less for it. Obviously, no stopping anyone from using a sheet that isn't supposed to be used for that. Just because it's a sketch sheet doesn't mean I can't get to use it. Let's see what happens in the sketch sheet, which is sat right on top of that. So that looks, I think, agreeable enough for me to dare go into the process of tracing here. So this is probably, I think it's safe to say we have probably identified why it's going to be a map that won't be completed over the course of this video. But you'll get a head start into the process of how it was created, and then perhaps I can post the completed thing online somewhere. If only there was a fantastic community somewhere where I could put it on display. I think I have a place in mind which I will be using. Okay, so that was that. I will now actually grab both of them, and I will give them, I'll try and see what white does. White actually, yeah, that does it. So, for the next bit here, I'm going to be doing the exact opposite of what I was doing earlier. I will be creating a bit of a zigzag pattern here. As you can tell, we are kind of making rather quick progress towards what you would see in paintings there, where you have this sort of almost like a lightning quality to the way the waves behave, right? As far as the visuals are concerned. So I'm adding a bit of a foam there, I guess, with this white color in the sketch sheet. It's all very fascinating. I'm gonna have to go full on David Attenborough here, I think, with, I don't want to disturb the polygons, I guess. And they're sort of mating with the with the line. So there we are. Yeah, this looks fantastic already. Yeah, let's just do a quick bit more of these, and then then I guess I will be giving you the final results elsewhere. But as far as the method is concerned, I am rather pleased with how it turned out. To be perfectly honest, I'm perhaps overwhelmed slightly with how well this played out. And of course, you don't have to pay attention too much to these sort of what went before, because I think it's an ocean after all, so water sort of, it makes sense for the water to be less than compliant with regards to about anything, I guess. But of course, a great the longer, of course, the line to trace along, the better, because that means I don't have to do individual lines, I suppose. So I can just focus on getting the basic shapes in there. And if you were to draw for your niece or nephew a very cool painting with lightning going on, I suppose this is probably the way to go as well, like a night sky and then some very, very, very cool lightning. Pro tip. So yeah, I would not dare risk going with too many of these at the same time, because that would make for a rather crowded space, and I would have trouble knowing which path am I going back along currently, as one does, of course. But no, jokes aside, that's a very real problem, I guess, with this particular approach to the phenomenon. So I know that I've done these already. Maybe I can actually fill out, put in the proper color. I don't do them twice. That would be horrible. And of course, I don't have to go all the way back over there for the palette to grab things now with so a very limited number of entities on screen. I guess I can just sort of grab whatever I need from the stuff already showing, right? So again, I think you get the idea there with regards to what I'm going for. I can go for as many as I want to, but yeah, let's do something about, I guess, the water itself. Needs to get less flat. If you recall from the orb earlier, there needs to be some sort of more gradient, I guess, is what we need. So we're gonna fill, I think, the insides of these little cells, these individual bits and pieces, and that will immediately, of course, create a bit of a sense of depth there between the way the water behaves. You'll get sort of like individual. I can perhaps cheat a little and go very thinly crossing over between cells, and I think I'll actually do that. What a terrible, terrible person I am. Cheating, would you believe? So yeah, you'll get these color variations in a way that you would expect from the way perhaps someone decided to paint this particular part of the ocean where there happens to be a rock and a wizard tower. Always the wizard tower, I guess. I forget which cells I've done already, so I'm just going to go ahead and do them all in one go. Of course, I don't want to have want to be threading here, of course, and making sure I only get sort of like the minimum. The crossing over there, if it's too sort of conspicuous, then it's going to just be a very solid fill altogether. But I appear to be on the track there for grandeur, or getting it right at the very least. So how was your weekend? It was great. I watched the grass grow and then some. And then there was an ocean, which startled me ever so slightly because I didn't expect it to be there when I got up in the morning on that day. Right, this is nice. I'm gonna have to return to that particular cell. Ooh, horrible results with the effects turned off, but kind of does the trick, I think. Let's just do these bits down here. Obviously I will eventually graft smaller sort of portions in there and keep adding these cells then in a structure that will allow for the interpretation that we have a bit of a thing going on here with the water. So that's very nice. That's a-okay, as they say. And I'll be adding some more of the same. Just sort of getting more darker colors there into the mix. I'm not sure it was a great idea necessarily to go off, just stay within the map border there, but yeah, let's do some brown yellowish green as well. See what we get. Yeah, a nice blend of and mix of colors there. I don't know if feels supernatural, but it's also not going to be the ultra realistic thing that I'm going for here with the thing. So for the very bright finish there, and see where that gets us. If this is a good choice of colors, we'll know in a few seconds. All depends on the mood, I guess. Is that a good ocean watercolor? Then I may want to use it. That's going to be horrible, isn't it? Well, that was kind of okay. Right, so I think I'm on the track to something with this. I think it's a perfectly healthy ocean for the time being. Let me just check and see if I'm on the right track. Let's go back and put on some texture that everyone will have forgotten about by now, I reckon. Yeah, I think that's. Let's crank out let's render it and see where we end up. Just the water for now. I'll publish it, and I will, if there's any major revelations that I discover along the way, then I'll make sure to put that in the telling bit on the forums for you. But for the time being, this would be the Tower on Rock painting, which yeah, seems like it's going to be good. Thank you for tuning in again. I don't get around making videos very often for obvious reasons. There's only so many hours to the day. So yeah, I'll see you on the flip side, and have a good one. Enjoy your paintings, I guess. Ta!